Breaking news tonight, Alabama's Republican Governor Kay Ivey did sign into law a bill that outlaws abortion except in cases of what the new law calls, quote, a serious health risk to the pregnant woman. Cases of rape and incest are not exempt under this bill, and doctors who perform an abortion could face up to 99 years in prison. The governor acknowledged that this bill is designed to get the Supreme Court to reconsider and overturn Roe versus Wade. The governor said in a statement, the sponsors of this bill believe that it is time once again for the U.S. Supreme Court to revisit this important matter, and they believe this act may bring about the best opportunity for this to occur. Alabama's abortion ban is not slated to take effect for 6 months, but Planned Parenthood and the ACLU have already said they plan to challenge it. Today, the groups filed a lawsuit to block Ohio's 6-week abortion ban, that doesn't allow abortions after 6 weeks, from taking effect in July, arguing that it directly conflicts with the precedent and the rules set in Roe versus Wade. Ohio is one of 4 states just this year to impose some form of a ban on abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, before most women even know that they are pregnant. Courts have already struck down similar laws passed in Iowa, Kentucky, and North Dakota. Today, the Democratic presidential candidates reacted to the new Alabama law.
What they did in Alabama, what they did in Georgia, is unconstitutional.
They're trying to overturn Roe versus Wade. That's wrong, and we will fight back.
It's nothing short of an attack on women's basic human rights and civil rights, and it's something that women of America are going to have to fight against with everything they've got.
Women's health care is under attack, and we will not stand for it. We will not stand for it.
Joining us now is Staci Fox, the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Southeast. Also with us, Joyce Vance, a former U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Alabama and a professor at the University of Alabama School of Law. She's an MSNBC legal contributor. And Joyce Vance, what happens next?
Well, next we'll see this Alabama bill begin to face legal challenges. I suspect we'll also see an outpouring of protests, certainly in Alabama, where those protests have already been scheduled for this Sunday, but I think also across the country. And this Alabama bill, which is so draconian, may spark nationwide focus on what's going on in this area.
Let's listen to what Pat Robertson had to say today, because Staci Fox, this may be the first time you find yourself agreeing with Pat Robertson, at least in part. Let's listen to this.
I think Alabama has gone too far. They've passed a law that would give a 99-year prison sentence to people who commit abortion. There's no exception for rape or incest. It's an extreme law, and they want to challenge Roe versus Wade. But my humble view is that this is not the case we want to bring to the Supreme Court, because I think this one will lose.
Staci Fox, how did Alabama go farther than Pat Robertson's willing to go?
Lawrence, well, I think yesterday Alabama went so far as to ignore the rape survivors that were standing in the gallery while the Senate was debating this bill. They clearly stated yesterday that they don't actually care about the women of Alabama. And this is no more than a political game. You know, we work across Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. All 3 of these states have enacted bans like this and are literally playing games with women's lives in the South.
And Joyce Vance, what do you make of Pat Robertson's legal scholarship here, saying that he actually thinks this is a bad case for abortion opponents to bring to the Supreme Court, that Pat Robertson thinks this one will lose?
Well, if you believe in traditional legal analysis, a precedent like Roe versus Wade, which is almost 50 years old and certainly well established, is a precedent that can't be challenged by any of these cases. So in that sense, Pat Robertson is absolutely correct. The serious prospect that we face here, Lawrence, is watching this effort not just to erode, not just to chip away at the protections that Roe versus Wade established for women, but at a full frontal assault designed to eradicate it from legal precedent. That's something that's not warranted by the Alabama bill or any other bill.
I want to take a look at Glamour magazine cover. This is a non-political magazine, to say the least. They have put up there the 25 men who voted for this Alabama bill. These are the 25 who, in particular, voted against an amendment that would have allowed an exception for victims of rape or incest. And Staci, talk about what the reaction has been in Alabama, where you are, in these last 24 hours.
Well, I think Alabamians are horrified, Lawrence. I mean, just in the hours after the vote in the Senate last night, thousands of Alabamians have signed on to a veto petition that we've stood up. And I think in a state where 51% of the population of Alabama are women, and where women are dying from cervical cancer, this state has said loud and clear that they don't care about women's health. They care about their own political gains. And Lawrence, to be honest, who are on my mind today are our patients who aren't following the news really closely. They're seeing the headlines, and they're worried that abortion is already illegal in Alabama. And I want them to know that abortion is safe and legal and available to them, and we will fight this every step of the way.
A good point, Joyce Vance. This bill does not take effect for 6 months. Can the legal challenge to the bill begin before the bill takes effect?
It can, and this is typically in Alabama how we've dealt with unconstitutional state laws, like we dealt with Alabama's immigration bill in 2011. The hope here is that folks like the ACLU, whoever else chooses to challenge this bill, will go into court and have it enjoined so that it will never go into effect and impact the lives of Alabama women.
Staci Fox and Joyce Vance, thank you very much for joining us on this important story tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Lawrence. Thanks, Joyce.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.